Not all chess brilliance is loud and flashy. Sometimes it's quiet, calculated, and strikes when you least expect it. This game by Bobby Fischer is a perfect example. An unassuming battle where Fischer quietly builds up pressure, setting a trap that leaves his opponent with no escape. Let's break down this subtle masterpiece. The game kicks off with Fischer's pawn to a4, the traditional king's pawn opening. Black responds with pawn to ce6, entering the Caro-Kann defense. Fischer chooses a quiet path, playing pawn to d3, a flexible, calm move, avoiding theory-heavy lines. Black comes in strong with pawn to d5, claiming the center. Fischer develops his knight to d2, preparing for future action without committing to any sharp lines. Black fianchettos with pawn to g6, and Fischer answers by developing his knight to f3 and pawn to g3, both players setting up their positions for a long game. Black's bishop to g7 comes next, followed by Fischer's bishop to g2, and both players castle kingside, ready to embark on the real battle ahead. Fischer's first subtle move, rook to e1. This prepares for central play, while Black pushes pawn to d4, aiming for space. Fischer continues with pawn to a4, a quiet pawn move that looks harmless but signals future expansion. Black plays pawn to c5, reinforcing his hold on the center. Fischer answers with knight to c4, eyeing Black's weak d5 pawn. Black develops with knight to c6, and Fischer solidifies his hold with pawn to c3, starting to control the d4 square. After bishop to e6, Fischer exchanges pawns. Pawn takes d4, and after bishop takes c4, he recaptures with pawn takes c4. Black answers with pawn takes d4, and Fischer goes for pawn to e5, challenging the center. Black plays queen to d7, connecting his rooks, and Fischer uses this moment to expand with pawn to h4. This quiet move starts to hint at something bigger brewing on the kingside. Black's response, pawn to d3, pushing deep into Fischer's half. Now Fischer makes a game-changing move. He sacrifices with pawn to a6, and Black takes the bait. Pawn takes a6. Fischer jumps in with knight takes a6, threatening everything. Black's bishop takes c3 opens up the position, and Fischer plays pawn takes c3 with the pressure mounting. Then comes the real twist. Fischer's knight to c2 puts the pressure on, forking the rook and the king. Black's response? Knight to b4, attempting to deflect, but Fischer's precision doesn't waver. Knight to d8 locks down Black's options, and Fischer grabs more material with queen to d2, forcing a cleanup of Black's defenses. Now Fischer is in complete control. Rook to e1, eyeing Black's weak spots, while Black tries to regroup. Fischer continues with bishop to d5, threatening a devastating attack. He then plays queen to d3, pressuring Black's position. Fischer exchanges off pieces, rook takes e8, followed by queen takes e8. He picks off pawns with bishop takes b7, while Black desperately tries to counter. Fischer simplifies the position, using his queen and pawns to dominate the center. He finishes with queen to a6, and the tension escalates. Every move builds into Fischer's intricate web. Finally, with queen to a7, Fischer forces Black into a helpless position. The inevitable happens as Fischer centralizes his pieces and secures victory with a series of calm, crushing moves. This game is a perfect example of Fischer's brilliance, not just in attack, but in patience and subtlety. Every piece he moved had a purpose, and every moment was part of a larger plan. Fischer didn't need to rush. Instead, he built a fortress, trapped his opponent, and let the game unfold. This wasn't just chess. It was a masterpiece in motion. If you're enjoying these deep dives into Fischer's genius, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments.